In late 1950, a new and deadly front opened in the Korean War. It was not fought by infantry in frozen trenches, but by a new breed of warrior in the cold, clear skies high above the Yalu River. This narrow, winding border between North Korea and China became a lethal arena, a patch of airspace that would earn the grim nickname MiG Alley. It was here that Soviet-piloted MiG-15s, flying in absolute secrecy to support their communist allies, had established a brutal and terrifying air supremacy. Their new swept-wing jet was a terrifying shock to United Nations forces. Flying with impunity, they effortlessly swept aside the older, straight-winged American jets like the F-80 and F-84. They tore apart the formations of legendary B-29 Superfortress bombers, the very weapons that had devastated Japan just years before. This complete dominance, however, was destined to be short-lived, as an American answer was already being rushed to the front. The MiG-15 was, without question, a marvel of aeronautical design. It was light, incredibly agile, and built around a powerful Klima VK-1 engine, an engine the Soviets had brilliantly and rapidly reverse-engineered from a Rolls-Royce. An engine the British government had naively sold them. The MiG was a pure interceptor, built for one purpose: to climb high and kill bombers. It possessed a phenomenal rate of climb that no American jet could match, allowing it to zoom climb away from danger. Its service ceiling of 50,000 feet was a high-altitude sanctuary where it could fly untouched. Its armament was devastating, consisting of two 23mm cannons and a single enormous 37mm cannon that could shatter a B-29 with just a handful of explosive hits. And the men in the cockpits were not inexperienced. They were a secret cadre of elite Soviet fighter aces, many of them highly decorated veterans from the brutal air war of the Eastern Front, who brought a level of skill and ruthlessness that was unmatched. Into this lopsided fight, the United States rushed its own swept-wing fighter, the F-86 Sabre. When the first Sabres arrived in Korea, pilots and commanders alike looked at the on-paper statistics with deep concern. The contest still seemed to heavily favor the MiG. The Sabre was a heavier, more complex, and more solidly built aircraft, which meant it could not climb as fast as the MiG, nor could it reach the same altitudes. Its armament of 6.50 caliber machine guns, the very same guns used in the P-51 Mustang, seemed anemic, almost archaic, compared to the MiG's heavy cannons. And yet, what happened next became the stuff of legend. The F-86 Sabre pilots, despite their disadvantages, began to systematically dismantle the MiG-15's reputation. They began to win, achieving a lopsided kill ratio that stunned the Soviet high command and, for the first time, instilled a deep-seated fear in their elite pilots. The first reason for this stunning reversal was a revolutionary piece of technology hidden in the Sabre's nose: the A-1CM radar-ranging Gunsight. This single piece of equipment changed the very nature of aerial combat. The MiG-15 pilot, like all his predecessors, used a standard gyroscopic gunsight. This system required the pilot to become a human ballistic computer, forcing him to manually estimate the range to his target, its wingspan, and its angle, all while mentally calculating the complex lead needed to hit a target moving at 600 miles per hour. The F-86 pilot, by contrast, simply had to place a targeting pipper on the enemy MiG. A small radar dish in the Sabre's nose would then instantly and automatically feed the exact range down to the yard to an analog computer, which adjusted the sight in real time. This magic gunsight showed the pilot exactly where to aim to guarantee a hit, a technological advantage that was as decisive as it was incomprehensible to the enemy. The second, and equally decisive, advantage was not a weapon, but a simple piece of clothing: the G-suit. In a high-speed turning dogfight, the combatants pull immense G-forces, which drain the blood from the pilot's head and pool it in their lower extremities. This leads to a gray-out, then tunnel vision, a blackout, and finally, G-induced loss of consciousness, or G-LOCA death sentence in a dogfight. The Soviet pilots, in their simpler, lighter jets, had no protection against this. The American pilots wore trousers with inflatable bladders that were connected to the aircraft systems. The instant the pilot entered a high-G maneuver, these bladders automatically squeezed his legs and abdomen like a vice, keeping the blood in his head. This simple device allowed the Sabre pilot to sustain a tighter, more punishing turn for longer, relentlessly forcing his aircraft onto the MiG's tail, while the Soviet pilot was busy fighting his own body to stay conscious. The combination of these two systems was devastatingly lethal. A Sabre pilot, kept fully conscious by his G-suit, could engage in a turning fight he was almost guaranteed to win. He could outmaneuver his adversary, pulling Gs that the MiG pilot simply could not physically endure. Once he gained the advantageous position on the MiG's tail, his radar gunsight eliminated all the guesswork. He no longer needed to be a perfect marksman. The computer did the hard part. He could open fire with lethal accuracy from distances the MiG pilots believed were perfectly safe. Soviet aces were left bewildered, reporting being hit from impossible ranges by an enemy who seemed immune to the physical limitations of high-speed combat. The Sabre's .50 caliber machine guns, firing at a high rate, were perfectly suited to this system, creating a dense, accurate cone of fire like a buzzsaw that was far more effective at hitting a fleeting target than the MiG's slower-firing cannons. This technological superiority was amplified by critical differences in tactics and strategy, creating a perfect storm for the Soviet pilots. The American pilots operated with the flexible Fluid 4 formation, a mutually supporting tactic developed in World War II that encouraged aggressive, individual initiative, with wingmen whose sole job was to protect their leaders. The Soviet pilots, in contrast, were often rigidly controlled from the ground by a GCI, or Ground Control Intercept Operator, their tactics stiff, defensive, and predictable. Furthermore, the entire Soviet involvement in the war was a state secret. Stalin had strictly forbidden his pilots from being captured, which meant they were not allowed to fly over uncontrolled territory or the ocean. American pilots quickly learned they could escape any losing fight by simply diving for this safe boundary, an invisible line in the sky that infuriated their Soviet opponents, who were forced to break off pursuit every time. Ultimately, the F-86 Sabre was feared not because it was a faster or higher-flying aircraft. It was feared because it was a more advanced and complete weapon system. It was the first fighter to truly prove that the integration of technology was more important than raw performance. It paired a well-trained, aggressive pilot with revolutionary technologies like the radar gunsight and the G-suit, creating a man-machine partnership that was far greater than the sum of its parts. This combination, backed by a tactical doctrine that gave them a distinct edge, proved decisive. The F-86 demonstrated, in the fiery skies of MiG Alley, that the new age of jet warfare would be dominated not by the fastest plane, but by the smartest one.